The sound of splintering wood cracked through the classroom like thunder. Tyler Morrison's massive frame towered over the wreckage of what had been Miss Brooks' desk. Papers floating down like autumn leaves, while 30 smartphones captured every second. At 6 feet 3 inches of pure athletic muscle, wrapped in the legendary number 7 jersey. The star quarterback's face burned crimson with rage. "Who do you think you are? Giving me an f?" His voice boomed across the stunned silence, fists still trembling from the impact. Nervous laughter rippled through some students while others held their breath, waiting for the explosion they knew was coming. Emily Brooks stood motionless behind the destroyed furniture, all 5 feet 2 inches of her slight frame wrapped in a simple navy dress. Not a flinch, not a gasp, not even a widening of her eyes. She studied Tyler with an expression that made several students shift uncomfortably in their seats, as if she were reading something written on his face that only she could see. "Tyler!" Her voice emerged soft as silk, barely above a whisper, yet somehow filling the entire room. "In 15 seconds, everything is going to change." The quarterback's sneer faltered for just a moment before returning with forced bravado. Something in her tone, in the absolute certainty of those words, sent an inexplicable chill down his spine. Behind him, his teammates Jake and Marcus exchanged glances, their usual swagger suddenly feeling hollow. Westbridge Academy prided itself on producing champions, and no one embodied that more than Tyler Morrison. The private school's $60,000 annual tuition bought more than education. It purchased protection, privilege, and the promise that certain indiscretions would remain buried beneath generous donations and winning seasons. Tyler's father, Richard Morrison, had ensured his son's path to USC remained clear of any obstacles, academic or otherwise. 3 teachers had already learned this lesson the hard way. Mr. Chen had lasted 2 months before resigning after questioning Tyler's mysteriously improving grades. Ms. Rodriguez had transferred mid-semester following an incident involving destroyed classroom property that somehow never made it into Tyler's permanent record. Coach Williams, despite 20 years at the school, had quietly accepted early retirement rather than bench the star player for disciplinary reasons. Emily Brooks had arrived just 1 week ago. Her hiring rushed through to fill the sudden vacancy in the English department. At 26, she looked even younger, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and a wardrobe that screamed underpaid educator rather than someone who belonged among Westbridge's elite. The betting pool among Tyler's crew had given her 2 weeks maximum before she either bent to their will or broke entirely. The morning had started with what should have been a routine assignment return. Emily had spent the weekend grading essays on integrity in sports, a topic Principal Matthews had personally suggested would resonate with their athletic students. Tyler's paper had been a masterpiece of plagiarism, lifted wholesale from 3 different websites with only the name changed at the top. The bright red F at the top of his paper had been accompanied by a note, "See me after class to discuss academic honesty." He had crumpled the paper and tossed it at her feet instead. "My father donates more to this school than you make in 5 years." Tyler had snarled before the desk-flipping incident. "You're nobody. A temporary problem." Now, as papers settled around them like snow, Emily reached into her bag with deliberate calm. Several students tensed, wondering if she was calling security. Instead, she pulled out a device that made Kevin Chen, the school's tech-savvy journalist, lean forward with sudden interest. This wasn't any ordinary smartphone. The military-grade encrypted device in her hand featured recording capabilities that included timestamp verification, cloud backup encryption, and forensic data recovery systems used by federal law enforcement. Every word spoken, every threatening gesture, every piece of evidence was being professionally documented and stored in legally admissible formats. The kind of technology that cost several $1,000s, far beyond a teacher's salary. "That's recording us without consent," Jake protested, finally finding his voice. "That's illegal." Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile. "California is a two-party consent state for private conversations, Jake, but this is a classroom setting with 30 witnesses. Everything happening here is public record." Her fingers moved across the screen with a speed that suggested extensive training, including the destruction of school property, valued at approximately $800. That pushes this incident into felony territory. The legal terminology flowing so easily from the new teacher's mouth made several students sit straighter. Sophia Martinez, a scholarship student who usually kept her head down around Tyler's crew, found herself pulling out her own phone to continue recording. Something was different about Miss Brooks, something that went beyond a teacher standing up to a bully. "You can't prove anything." Marcus stepped forward, his linebacker frame meant to intimidate. "It's your word against ours." Emily gestured to the sea of phones still recording. "Actually, it's my word plus approximately 90,000 Instagram followers who are watching Tyler's live stream right now." She tilted her head toward Derek, whose phone was indeed broadcasting to Tyler's considerable social media following. Derek started streaming the moment Tyler stood up. Every second of this is already archived across multiple platforms. The color began draining from Tyler's face as he grabbed for Derek's phone, but the damage was done. Comments were flooding in, and not the supportive kind he was used to. The carefully crafted image of the scholar-athlete was crumbling in real time. "Turn it off," Tyler commanded, but Derek's hands shook as he fumbled with the device. The live stream had taken on a life of its own, shared and reshared beyond their control. Emily continued as if nothing had happened, bending to gather some of the scattered papers. Her movements were precise, economical, each gesture calculated. When she straightened, several students noticed how she positioned herself with clear sightlines to all exits. Her stance balanced despite the heels she wore. "You have a game Friday night against Riverside," she mentioned casually, as if discussing the weather. "Important for your USC recruitment. Isn't it scouts will be there?" Tyler's jaw clenched. "Don't threaten me." "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply observing that actions have consequences." She paused, letting the words sink in. "For instance, did you know that USC's recruiting violations from 2019 are still under federal investigation? They're particularly sensitive about character issues right now. One phone call about a player with violent tendencies, you wouldn't dare." Richard Morrison's influence reached far, but even he couldn't control federal investigations. Emily shrugged, a gesture so casual it made Tyler's temper flare again. "I'm just a temporary problem. Remember, what could I possibly do?" The bell rang, shattering the tension momentarily as students began gathering their belongings. But no one actually left, too invested in whatever was unfolding between the new teacher and their untouchable quarterback. "Everyone out," Tyler commanded, trying to regain control. "Now!" For the first time in his 4 years at Westbridge. No one moved. Sophia Martinez actually took a step closer, her phone steady as she continued recording. Kevin Chen pulled out a small digital recorder from his journalism kit, the red light indicating it was capturing everything. "Interesting," Emily observed. Your power seems to be evaporating rather quickly. Tyler, almost like it was never real to begin with, just borrowed from your father's checkbook. The calculated insult hit its mark. Tyler lunged forward, stopped only by Jake's restraining hand on his shoulder. "Dude, there's too many cameras," his friend hissed. "Not here." Smart advice, Emily agreed. But then again, intelligence was never your strong suit. Was it? Tyler, that's why you need others to write your papers. Tell me, did you even read the essay you submitted? Or did you just trust that Daddy's donations would guarantee a passing grade like always? Principal Matthews chose that moment to appear in the doorway, his former coaching background evident in his build despite the expensive suit. His eyes took in the destroyed desk, the phone's recording, and Emily's calm demeanor with the practiced assessment of someone used to managing crises. "What's going on here?" His voice carried forced authority, but Emily noticed how his eyes flickered nervously between her and Tyler. Tyler had an emotional outburst regarding his grade, Emily reported with clinical detachment. He destroyed school property and created an unsafe learning environment. I was just explaining the legal ramifications of his actions. Matthews's face cycled through several expressions before settling on what he clearly thought was stern disapproval. "Tyler, my office. Now." He turned to Emily. "Miss Brooks, we'll discuss this incident after I've spoken with the student." "Of course," Emily agreed readily. Too readily, Tyler thought. "I'll just file my report with the district office while I wait. They require immediate notification of any violent incidents, as I'm sure you're aware. State Education Code 21.7. The principal's eye twitched. There was no such code, but the specificity made him hesitate. "That won't be necessary. We handle disciplinary matters internally at Westbridge." "Like you handled Mr. Chen's complaints? Or Ms. Rodriguez's?" Emily's voice remained pleasant, conversational. "Or Coach Williams's concerns about recruiting violations?" The silence that followed was deafening. Matthew's face flushed deep red, while Tyler looked between them with growing unease. How did the new teacher know about incidents that had been carefully kept out of official records? "I don't know what you think you know," Matthews began, but Emily cut him off with a gesture. "I know enough. For instance, I know that USC isn't the only school with recruiting violations under investigation. The FBI's Sports Bribery Task Force has been very interested in certain private academies that seem to produce an unusual number of athletes with sudden grade improvements." She smiled sweetly. "But I'm sure that's just coincidence." Tyler's phone buzzed, then Jake's, then Marcus's. Within seconds, half the class was checking their devices as notification after notification flooded in. The live stream had been picked up by local sports blogs, then larger outlets. Had Westbridge scandal was already trending. "Everyone out!" Matthews barked, real panic creeping into his voice now. "This classroom is closed, pending investigation." And this time students complied. But slowly, reluctantly, phones still recording as they filed past. Sophia Martinez lingered, catching Emily's eye with a look of gratitude mixed with concern. Emily gave her the slightest nod, a silent message that seemed to reassure the girl. Soon, only Tyler, his crew, Principal Matthews, and Emily remained. The destroyed desk stood between them like evidence at a crime scene. Which, Emily reflected, it essentially was. "You have no idea who you're messing with," Tyler growled, his earlier bravado replaced with something darker. "My father owns half this city. One word from him, and you'll never teach again. Richard Morrison, Emily said thoughtfully, CEO of Morrison Development. Net worth approximately $47 million. 3 DUIs expunged from his record, 2 sexual harassment suits settled out of court, and currently under SEC investigation for insider trading. She tilted her head. Did I miss anything? Tyler's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Even Matthews took a step back. How do you... Tyler started, then stopped, his mind racing. Public records are fascinating things, Emily continued. For instance, did you know that assaulting a teacher, even verbally, can trigger mandatory reporting to CPS, and once CPS is involved, they have access to all sorts of interesting family history, including sealed juvenile records. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tyler's face had gone from red to pale, a sheen of sweat appearing on his forehead despite the air conditioning. What do you want? Matthews asked, abandoning all pretense of authority. What I want is simple. Tyler will clean up this mess, pay for the damaged desk, and serve the suspension that any other student would receive for such behavior. He'll also rewrite his essay, properly this time, on why plagiarism is both academically and ethically wrong. She paused. Oh, and he'll apologize publicly at Friday's game. Like hell, Tyler snarled, but there was fear in his eyes now. Emily pulled out a folder from her bag, one that had been hidden beneath the device. She opened it, revealing a stack of papers that made Tyler stumble backward, as if physically struck. His friends couldn't see the contents, but his reaction told them everything. How, his voice cracked, all traces of the confident athlete gone. November 15th, 2021. Emily said quietly. Room 237. Rachel Martinez. The names hit Tyler like physical blows. His legs gave out, and he collapsed into a chair. Face ashen. Jake and Marcus looked at each other in confusion, while Matthew's expression suggested he knew exactly what those words meant. That's impossible, Tyler whispered. Those records were sealed. Dad made sure. Your father paid to bury a police report. Emily agreed. He paid to silence a traumatized 16-year-old girl and her family. He paid to have records destroyed and witnesses relocated. But he couldn't pay off everyone. Some people actually believe in justice. The folder in Emily's hands contained photographs, text messages, and medical reports that should have been destroyed years ago. Tyler's breathing became ragged as she laid them out methodically on an undamaged section of desk. Each piece of evidence was like a nail in the coffin of his carefully constructed life. Rachel Martinez was a sophomore here, Emily continued, her voice carrying the weight of carefully controlled anger. Honor student, volleyball player, until November 15th, when she attended your victory party. She looked directly at Tyler. You remember that night, don't you? The night Westbridge beat Cathedral Catholic 56-7. Your best game ever. Matthews moved toward the door, but Emily's next words stopped him cold. I wouldn't leave just yet. Principal Matthews, your signature is on several of these documents, the ones authorizing Rachel's immediate transfer to another district, the ones accepting a rather large donation from Morrison Development exactly 1 week later. This is blackmail, Matthews sputtered. No, Emily corrected. Blackmail would be threatening to expose your crimes unless you comply with demands. This is justice. There's a significant difference. Jake and Marcus had backed away from Tyler, the reality of the situation finally penetrating their athletic armor. Derek's phone had long since stopped recording, his hands shaking too badly to hold it steady. "She's lying," Tyler managed, but his voice held no conviction. "That girl, she wanted it. She came to the party dressed." "Stop!" Emily's voice cut through his pathetic justification like a blade. Rachel Martinez spent 3 months in psychiatric care. She attempted suicide twice. Her family lost their home fighting legal battles against your father's lawyers. She's in witness protection now because of death threats from your father's associates. She pulled out her phone again, but this time she accessed something that made Matthews gasp. On the screen was a federal database interface, complete with an FBI authentication screen. "You're not a teacher," Matthews breathed. "Oh, I am a teacher," Emily assured him. "I have a master's in education from Northwestern. I've just been on special assignment for the past 18 months. She pulled out a leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal the badge inside. Special Agent Emily Brooks, FBI, Crimes Against Children Unit. Tyler made a sound somewhere between a sob and a growl. "My father will destroy you." "Your father is currently in federal custody," Emily informed him, glancing at her watch. "As of approximately 7 minutes ago, agents executed search warrants at his home, office, and all Morrison Development properties. It turns out that paying bribes to cover up sexual assault is just the tip of the iceberg. The SEC investigation I mentioned, that was us too." The sound of sirens in the distance grew louder. Through the classroom windows, black SUVs could be seen entering the school parking lot. Students pressed against windows in other classrooms, phones out, capturing the arrival of federal law enforcement at their elite private school. "The really interesting thing," Emily continued conversationally, as if discussing lesson plans, "is how many other incidents we uncovered once we started pulling threads. Your father kept remarkably detailed records of his payoffs. 17 different cases over the past 6 years. You weren't the first athlete he protected. Tyler, just the most recent." Matthews made another move toward the door, but Emily shook her head. "Agent Coleman is waiting in the hallway. He's been there since I sent the signal 15 minutes ago. That's what I meant about everything changing in 15 seconds. Tyler." The countdown had already started. The door opened, and a tall man in a dark suit entered, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Agent Coleman surveyed the destroyed desk with professional interest before focusing on Tyler. "Tyler Morrison, you're under arrest for sexual assault, witness intimidation, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." As the officer stepped forward with handcuffs, Coleman turned to Matthews. "Principal Matthews, we'll need you to come with us as well. You have the right to remain silent." The words faded into background noise as Tyler's world collapsed. Through the window, he could see news vans already arriving, their satellite dishes extending like reaching fingers. His phone buzzed constantly with messages he'd never read. USC would withdraw their offer within hours. His father's lawyers would be too busy defending themselves to help him. Everything he'd built on a foundation of privilege and protection crumbled in minutes. "Why?" Tyler asked, as the handcuffs clicked closed. "Why go through all this? Why not just arrest us?" Emily packed her belongings with the same methodical precision she'd shown throughout the confrontation. Because arrest wasn't enough. You needed to understand what it feels like to be powerless, to have your voice ignored, to watch your life destroyed while authority figures look the other way. Rachel Martinez deserved that much. As they led Tyler out, students lined the hallways, their phones creating a gauntlet of documentation. Some looked shocked, others satisfied. Sophia Martinez, no relation to Rachel. Despite the shared surname, stood tallest among them. Tears streaming down her face. She'd kept her own assault by Tyler secret for 2 years. Too afraid to speak up. Now she wouldn't have to. Emily emerged last, carrying a box of personal items from her desk. The destroyed furniture would be replaced. But her work here was done. As she walked through the corridors, students began to applaud, not the orchestrated appreciation for a winning touchdown, but genuine gratitude for someone who'd stood up to the untouchable. In the parking lot, she paused beside her unremarkable sedan. Agent Coleman approached, loosening his tie. "Clean work, Brooks. The prosecution says they have enough for 20 to life on Morrison Sr. The son will probably get 10 to 15. And the others? 17 arrests so far. 3 more school administrators, 2 coaches, and a dozen parents who participated in the cover-ups." He shook his head. This place was rotten to the core. Emily nodded, but her expression remained troubled. She pulled out an evidence bag containing a single photograph that had been tucked behind the others in her folder. It showed a young woman's face, but not Rachel Martinez. Coleman frowned. "Who's that?" "I don't know. Found it in Morrison's personal files. The date on the back is from 2019, but there's no corresponding case file." She studied the image of the blonde girl who couldn't have been more than 15. No name, no report, nothing. Just this photo and a payment record for $2 million. "You think there are more victims?" Emily's expression darkened. "Morrison kept trophies. This photo was in a hidden safe with others. We got Tyler. We got the network he was part of. But..." She trailed off, looking back at the school where federal agents were still processing evidence. A text message appeared on her phone from an unknown number. "You missed one." Attached was a faculty photo from Westbridge Academy's website. One face was circled in red, a young history teacher who'd started the same year as several of the covered-up incidents. Emily recognized him from the background of crime scene photos. Always present, but never noticed. The metadata showed the message originated from inside the school. She looked up at the building where students still pressed against windows, watching justice unfold in real time. Somewhere among them, another predator walked free. Protected by shadows, the investigation hadn't yet illuminated. The math was horrifying. 17 cases they knew about. But how many more remained buried? Coleman saw her expression. "What is it?" Emily handed him the phone, her jaw set with grim determination. The Morrison network was just one piece. There's another player. Someone who's been operating alongside them but separately. Someone still inside. As they stood in the parking lot surrounded by federal vehicles and media vans, Emily realized the true scope of what they'd uncovered. Westbridge Academy wasn't just one scandal. It was a hunting ground where predators had operated with impunity for years, protected by wealth, power, and institutional complicity. She thought of Rachel Martinez, safe now but forever changed. Of Sophia Martinez, finally free to speak her truth. Of countless others who might never come forward. Tyler Morrison's arrest was justice. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough until every predator was exposed, every enabler held accountable. The history teacher's photo stared back at her from the phone screen, his bland smile hiding secrets she was determined to uncover. Tyler Morrison had been the obvious monster, loud and arrogant in his privilege. But the quiet ones, the ones who blended into the background while hunting in shadows, those were the most dangerous. Emily looked back at Coleman, her teacher's facade completely gone. replaced by the federal agent who'd spent 18 months building this case. Looks like I'll be teaching here a bit longer. The real monster was still teaching.